In what world do we get to choose what we get to do in it? What do you get to do on your daily basis? What kind of job do you do? What do you get up in the morning for? Who do you get up in the morning for? These are the questions I'm asking in this latest Omni content because I'm trying to talk about here what PolyInnovator is all about. It's this idea of what I'm doing. I'm hopeful that'll help you figure out what you're doing as well. Not to mention too, some people are curious, like, hey, what are you doing? Like, why are you spending so much time on this? This episode is going to tell you why I do those things I do. So from a young age, I chose a path that I decided for me. And it was something that just really kind of came out of nowhere, really. I wanted to be a businessman. I wanted to have my own business. I don't know if it was the attraction of power that a businessman or CEO would have, or if it was just really, I wanted to be the keeper of my own success, so to speak. I didn't want to have to rely on someone else. Now, ironically, I've worked for over a dozen different employers and 24 different roles, and so I've definitely been the employee, but I wanted to be the employer. I wanted to be the business creator. And I've created a handful of business over my years, and part of it was this, like my own little tiny business as a 10-year-old selling temporary tattoos. I go into more detail in this in the blog post, but the ideas that I wanted to share today are key. And I think that the path to world domination, as I joke about in the blog post, is one of those things where it's like, yeah, I actually do need like global dominance over a certain topic. And so it's really interesting when it comes to like Polymath, for example. One of the previous micro polycasts, I talk about like Polymath collaboration, where first off, just that topic in general, people who are polymathic working together spawns so many new innovations. That was the whole idea behind the hub of innovation, so to speak. But even the concept of people who are in the polymath space, such as like Dr. Angela Catalesa, who is a researcher in it, or Michael Araki, or even Wakas Ahmed. These are all people who are generating content in this topic, including myself as well. And it is better for us to work together. Just because, technically speaking, we are competitive in nature of like, okay, if someone's looking at their content, they're not looking at mine, and vice versa. In most cases, in most niches, you would be like, oh, I need to be competitive. Whereas in this particular one, and sometimes in other niches as well, it is better for us to work together and build each other up. That's why when I see Polymath's place, I try to share it. That's why when I see stuff from Michael Araki, I try to share it, for example. Even if I can't read Portuguese super well. Ironically, I kind of can a little bit from cognates, but I digress. This path before me of PolyInnovator chose me. It was also one of those things where it is built up over time. So what are you getting from this episode? Well, I'm going to teach you the mindset behind what I'm doing, and I'm going to teach you the strategies that I'm trying to do as well. I'm not going to go in super detail because there's other posts for that, like the how to go omnichannel posts where I really go into detail. But I wanted to give you the mindset behind that strategy and why I do it. And so this idea of like, please take into consideration that like I love to make content. I love the viewers that come in here, leave a comment, that kind of thing. If you do me a favor and leave a comment below based off like something we talked about in the episode, I can then reply to it. Just the comment itself helps with engagement. When you do that, it has to be someone else's comment, not my own per se. When someone else comments, I can go in there and like, heart, reply, at least if it's a good comment, obviously, and like heart pin it even, and these all act like counts of engagement towards my video and helps me grow. So even just one simple comment, like saying, hey, I like the video, or hey, I like this topic, can we talk more about it? These kind of things, that's going to help me in the long run as well. This all spawned from the desire to make a change. And part of it came from this whole idea of Gandhi's quote of, be the change you wish to see in the world. If you want something to happen, you have to go make it happen. If you see something that needs to be changed, no one else is going to see that. Maybe some other people do and they're not going to act on it. Most of the time, you're seeing something that other people don't see. Or if it's a pretty common thing, everyone's seen on it, but no one wants to act on it, which means that you need to be the person to do it. I saw things I wanted to act on, such as education, and I couldn't necessarily just stand by idly and not do anything about it. So, I'm like, okay, what do I do? Let's make my own do-it-yourself degree, and then people can modify it from there to their own desires. So if we can do more ourselves, such as with that mod degree, for example, building yourself up and learning more things, then you can reach a wider audience and reach a wider pool of people. Because you built yourself up, not only does that attract people to, like, hey, you know a skill, people are going to come to you for that skill, or you're going to at least help them with that skill. Then if you document your journey while learning that skill, then you're creating content and more points of entry for people to see you. So that's going to be a key throughout this video, is the points of entry. How many points of entry are you creating or distributing? And so how do you reach a global audience? Well, points of entry. You have to have so many that people from everywhere across the globe are going to find you. I was lucky where I found myself interviewing people from across the world. At least half of my guests are from different places in the world: Singapore, Canada, Australia, even in Africa too, no less. And it's just one of those things where being able to find people around the world and connect with them, that's one thing. But like being able to talk to them and interview them, that's another. And so if you're creating content and the people are going to like it, they're going to find you. But it's going to take longer if you're just creating content and not marketing it or distributing it or syndicating it, that kind of thing. Now, syndicating is a really touchy subject. Like, do you send the same thing to two different places? In most cases, no. For example, I syndicated my videos from Facebook to YouTube, right? I cared more about the YouTube, but I was like, you know what, I might as well post it to Facebook because that's what the tool I was using to repurpose needed. And so 2 different platforms there. And I'm also going to syndicate it to my special Poly Pro membership as well, so that way people can see all the free content plus the paid content. And it's going to take us some extra work, but at least it's in a separate place, and I'm not beholden to what YouTube desires. And same with Odyssey as well. It's going to be the centralized version of YouTube. I'm going to put my stuff on there eventually as well. And that's 3 different places where I'm putting the same video. Same thing goes for blog posts. I do not believe in taking your blog post and posting it to Medium. However, I do believe in social blog posts, which are a little bit more like a microblog. Not super big, but still helpful and kind of quick to digest. So, taking a LinkedIn article, putting it on YouTube, Medium as well, and maybe even Substack. I'm not sure what to do with Substack just yet. But you get the idea. Taking the same thing, putting it in 2 different places, 3 different places. Not much more than that, really, because then it starts getting too contextual to the platforms. And you still need to contextualize, too. You might be saying, like, hey, Medium, or hey, LinkedIn, and change it per platform. But for the most part, like, you don't need to contextualize too much when it comes to that. When it comes to the micro content, like the little clips, you need to change the aspect ratio for each platform. You need to make content for each one. For example, TikTok and Shorts and Reels. These are ones where if you make a good video, you can syndicate to all 3, especially right now while it's still new and growing. If you do not take off that TikTok watermark, it's going to hinder you. And if you try to do this 2 years from now, when the algorithms change, you're going to be screwed over. You're going to get mad at me like, hey, Dustin said I could do it. Yeah, I said you could do it 2 years ago, not necessarily now. But at this very moment, you can send the same stuff to Reels, Shorts, and TikTok without really any penalty. Now, there's also the idea of distribution, like how many channels you should have, and I'm having a debate in myself, like, should I have multiple channels? I want to have everything on the PolyInnovator channel, but perhaps I should make a separate channel for gaming, a separate channel for the modular degree, that kind of thing. So what is PolyInnovator? PolyInnovator is a personal brand I developed to create a foundation of all the future careers I wanted to have in life. Those careers could also be looked at as phases. These different phases, I wanted to work on certain topics or innovate certain areas, such as education, where I created a modular degree to be a modern approach of how we approach online education, or even offline education, if people accept the model more so. And then the same thing goes for gaming. I have certain ideas for a gaming saga where I want to create a certain game, take certain tropes, flip them on their heads, make some certain twists, and create a unique saga that allows for people to have a modern RPG experience, but with some new twists, and also have callbacks to old kind of games as well. And the same mentality happens for each of the different phases I want to do. Exercise, I have a unique approach to exercise, and the way I go about it simplifies it for a lot of people and makes it easier to process how do I level up with exercise. Polymathy, the meta niche, the umbrella niche, that's something I've been trying to work on too. I created a module. I created the multidisciplinary spectrum to be a way of organizing all these different terms of being multidisciplinary. And that way you can find one that you prefer, and it's like, hey, I identify as a multipotentialite, or jack of all trades, or something like that, or polymath even, if you're really advanced. Then in that case, you can find yourself on that spectrum and see where you might need to go next. So what is a polymath? Just to answer this real quick, it is someone with many deep areas of knowledge and or learnings. And that's kind of a simplification of it. How do you determine someone's a polymath or just an aspiring polymath, that kind of thing. There's researchers in the field, and hopefully they get that going too, but I'm thinking about it as well. Hopefully we can all find a consensus of like, okay, this is what really a basic level polymath, a more genuine polymath, maybe more advanced, something like that. It's not really a competitive competition, but it's more just like, how do we define someone with many different skills, especially when those skills could be so different. So the idea of a polymathic approach to content creation, that is what I'm talking about today. And I know I've been kind of jumping around different areas, but they all come together for now. And this idea of putting your hands in all the different cookie jars, the jack of all trades approach, creates this width. You need to have width as a creator. I hate it when people say, oh, pick one platform and just do that. Do YouTube, do blog, do podcasting. That's great, That's only going to get you so far. I think it's like insane to think about how big creators like MKBHDs only had a podcast for a couple of years. Same with Ali Abdaal too. And it's one of the things where they started out with videos and eventually moved on to podcasting. And I started out with basically blogging, just blogging 10 years ago. But eventually I tried to go into podcasting, but I knew I wanted to do videos. The only reason why I did videos so late is because I was still nervous and learning the skills. And that's the thing. Depending on which pillar you start from, you're going to have to learn the skills of the other ones eventually. And that's why I say I hate that. Like, yes, we need to focus on one and learn the skills. But a lot of the time, people focus on one too long when they could start experimenting with other ones. Take 80% of your time, focus on the main one, take the other 20%, learn some new channels. Don't just focus 100% in one. And that's where a lot of people falter, because now they're getting behind because there's so many other areas that people are being built up. Clubhouse, for example, this kind of live audio chat panel, that came out a couple years ago and was blowing up, and it was one of those things where, sure, it's dead now, but Twitter Spaces is a thing, and Discord has their own version of it, and Reddit, I think, is eventually going to have their own version of it. LinkedIn maybe as well, Pick My Brain as well. Each of these different platforms are working on that same kind of technology. And learning the skills from Clubhouse is going to apply to these other ones. And so, like, even if it's dead in the water, you still learn those skills. I was on Vine. I created Vines way back in the 2000s. But it was one of those things where I wasn't necessarily a creator just yet. I didn't really know what I was doing. This is before I even started my blog, really, or around the time I started my blog. And so when it died out, I was like, oh man, I can't download my Vines anymore. And especially since I stupidly deleted my Twitter account. But who knows what teenage me said too anyway, so it's probably good. But it's interesting to think about how whenever I created those content, the short form videos, I was learning how to be a video creator at that time. And I didn't do much, but I learned and I watched and I paid attention. And then when TikTok came around, or actually when I joined, it was Musical.ly, I was able to apply those learnings and do new things. So creating content across the board as an omni-channel with approach, and then you have the pillars, the trees of knowledge, if you will, the big deep skills. YouTube and blogs and podcasting, audio and let's say books and courses, all these big areas allow you to go much more deeper. So I wanted to create this consistency layer, which is why I created the Omni content, allowing me to create content on a more regular basis for all three big pillars, written, audio, video, and then maybe even slideshows when it started out. And then I can create more big stuff like books and courses down the line, coinciding with the different phases. And that's the approach that I've been doing and working towards and trying to build out. And just to mention this, I actually recorded this video already, but for some reason OBS didn't actually take my microphone. So I learned a mistake. I learned from my mistake where I was like, okay, let's make sure my microphone's reacting on the audio waveform here to make sure that I'm actually recording it. And so I'm really eager to finish the recording and seeing, like, did it actually take my voice this time? Because last time there was no audio. I was like, dang it, now I have to record it because talking over it wouldn't have worked. And so it's interesting to think about how that's a new skill. Even at my level where I've created nearly 200 videos, I still make mistakes like this. And you can learn from it now too. This is why I called myself out on it. So what I want from you to do today is to take this concept of phases and foundation, take the width of a jack of all trades and the T-shaped person, right? You have T like this, upside down T, but it's still a T-shaped person. You have the width and depth. Take that depth into like YouTube or podcasting or blog posts, but you get the width. Try each one. Dabble your hints. Put all the hints in the cookie jars. Eventually, those cookie jars get bigger and become a tree. The analogy doesn't really match up there, but you get what I mean. They start building out on their own. You don't necessarily have to focus on just one platform. You don't have to be a specialist. You can be a multi-specialist or multidisciplinary as a creator. In fact, you have to be. And eventually creators learn this. That's why these amazing creators like MKBHD created a podcast. He learned that he's like, okay, I need to have one of these. And maybe his Vox Media parent company probably like told him maybe you should have one or something like that, or encouraged him to have one. Regardless of his motivations behind it, he eventually did. And I think eventually too, he might work more on blogging down the line. Maybe he'll create a Substack or something like that. And the same idea of just creating content across the board. Have a hub, especially when you're doing very divergent things like I am. You need to have a hub like your website where everything can funnel into. But for the most part, be divergent, be wide, and that's what PolyInnovator is about. Is my version of being wide, documenting my journey so that people can follow along and also see the innovations happen in real time. Thank you, and hopefully this audio records.